Hey Gadget Groupies, I've got a fun one for you today. We are of course talking about the Osmo Mobile 2 smartphone gimbal system. Time to check out the pros, the cons, and determine if this is the right smartphone stabilizer for you. Starting off with design, this is going to be eminently familiar to anyone who's been paying attention to this accessory space over the last couple years. The changes from Osmo Mobile to Osmo Mobile 2 don't represent a radical rethought of the gimbal system for a phone. More, how can we introduce a high-quality stabilizer with significant cost reductions? All of the mainstay controls are still here: the power button, record button, a little thumb D-pad to control the angle and the rotation of your gimbal, and a zoom rocker that is utilized when you're using the DJI app on your phone. The battery is not user replaceable. We'll talk about that in just a bit, but supposedly this brings the benefit of including a larger battery capacity and alongside a full-sized USB port so that you can charge a gadget off of the battery in your gimbal. One change I do kinda like in removing the battery access slot from the bottom of the handle. Instead of a hole here for the battery, we now have a tripod thread, so you can attach this to a regular tripod, or I've also been using it as a part-time stand with a GorillaPod. Yeah, this looks a bit silly, and I'd be lying if I said this wasn't more than just a touch cumbersome. But as a solution, I like being able to splay these legs out. I feel this is a little bit more stable for whenever I need to set the Osmo down than the little plastic stand that you can buy for about the same price as a DSLR grade GorillaPod. I've been using this mostly with my LG V30, and the weight and height of this phone is right in the sweet spot of what the Osmo Mobile 2 can support. Rather than having some kind of counterweight system where you have to apply weight to one end to balance out the length of the phone, we just have a little arm that extends or retracts to properly calibrate your device for this gimbal. Ditto these springs in the cradle. It took me a quick second to realize you could scooch the phone up and down to properly seat it in the grip. Though I do wish the grabbers were just a little bit thicker, a little bit wider, because I can't quite keep my V30 in its nice rugged bumper case and still have it properly attached to the Osmo Mobile 2. You take a second to balance everything out so the phone will stay put on its own, and when you fire it up, the motors won't have to work as hard to stabilize the device. The area where you most feel that DJI did not skimp out on this hardware are in the gimbal's motors. They're fluid, they're responsive, and for the most part, they're pretty quiet. You will start to hear motor actuations, and they'll be picked up on your recordings with sudden corrective gestures. You're moving slowly through a pan in one part, and you quickly turn the Osmo. It takes a second for the Osmo to catch up, and then you will hear a little zzz, zzz, just as the motors try to compensate for that movement. While this system is taking a lot of the handshake out of your smartphone video, good fluid steady cam shots really do require you to adjust some of the physicality of how you move through a scene. You're still gonna get a lot of that first-person shooter head bump, which apparently game developers think we all walk like this, until you get pretty good at crouching and kind of absorbing the shock, rolling through your steps more like you would walk in a marching band. Battery life has been pretty great. 2 aggressive days of shooting got me down to around half. Now, DJI estimates around 15 hours of battery life on a brand new Osmo Mobile 2. I don't have any reason to doubt that much activity. Of course, your mileage is going to vary based on the length and weight of your phone, how much work these motors have to do to stabilize your device. If they have to work a little bit harder, then your battery is going to run down a little bit faster. Obviously, I've got a major concern with the built-in battery and how this cell is going to age and degrade over time. We can't easily replace it. Is there going to be a system through DJI to refresh these batteries, or are we now in a world where these types of gimbals will also be disposable or more disposable products that are expected to be repurchased over shorter and shorter windows of time? And for how good the hardware is, I couldn't quite get myself into the DJI camera app. It feels a little cluttered, it feels a little last gen, especially considering I'm coming at this from the Android perspective, where I don't really feel we get quite the same level of software polish that iOS users are gonna find on their version of the app when used with this hardware. It is pretty cool being able to control more of your composition from actual hardware on the grip, a more tactile experience. But when I'm trying to adjust settings in the camera app, I find that that LG's built-in camera app gave me better tools to actually get the shot I wanted. Considering the gimbal I was coming from before, it doesn't feel like too much of a compromise to get the phone set up through the DJI app and then just use the normal camera app that's already on your phone, while I'm just using this as more of a dumb stabilizer solution. Now, it's not all sunshine and rainbows, because this is a company that's trying to find a more aggressive consumer-friendly price point which means we are looking at this as a lower cost solution to get people into the DJI ecosystem. Even from the first Osmo Mobile, there are a few compromises, let alone when you compare it to other members of the Osmo line. My first experience with DJI was the original Osmo. Now, this is a gimbal system with a built-in camera module, not something for controlling a phone camera, but you would use your phone as the viewfinder for setting up your shot. What's kind of cool is this setup was modular, is they were gonna offer different components that you could plug into this system if you wanted higher quality optics or larger camera sensors. What the Osmo Mobiles have always lacked that I like about this Osmo are the gimbal locking points. Got a little flip switch here to control the swivel, and then when you push through a certain threshold, the camera and top arm are also locked into place. It makes you feel a little bit more comfortable about how you store this camera. The Mobile 2 also loses a couple other nice hardware features like the trigger front switch, and then also the side point where you can connect other devices or lighting or other accessories to the grip. Kinda nitpicky, but I also really like the texture on the handle of the original Osmo. Kinda wish we had a little bit more grip than the smooth plastic we have on the Mobile 2. Folks, let's wrap this up. Where's that leave us with the Osmo Mobile 2? Is this a wont gadget? Yeah, it absolutely is. Especially coming from my last gimbal, my Kumba Cam, which was a lot more expensive, not nearly as nicely laid out, and much more difficult to set up, balance, and control. Osmo Mobile 2 is light years ahead of where we were when gimbals first made it to the market. That being said, if you already have an Osmo gimbal or an Osmo Mobile 1, this is not gonna be a substantial upgrade over the hardware you already have. But that means if you're just getting into this space, if you're looking at shopping your first gimbal, DJI now has a solution that handily goes head to head against a number of the import products that we're seeing, some of the no brand name solutions that can be sold dirt cheap. Only having had brief interactions with some of those Chinese imports, it's gonna be up to you whether or not you're looking at a name brand solution or if you think you can save a little cash by going with some sort of import. DJI is a name brand company, so I'm expecting name brand support. If there's a firmware update, the app could use a little bit more polish on Android. I'm expecting to see that in a future update. Folks, this hits the sweet spot for me. It gets us into a lower price tier. The actual hardware that you care about is right on point. You just have to decide for yourself what are some of the compromises you're willing to live with and how aggressive into this space are you wanting to invest to smooth out your video production from your phone. If you're looking to get out of that selfie stick tier of smartphone holders or cradles, I think this is gonna be a great solution to take your vlogging or your mobile journalism up to the next level. Of course, I've got some links down below this video where you can find more info on the Osmo Mobile 2, where you can shop this puppy online. Those affiliate links do help support this channel, as does checking out my Patreon campaign, where patrons get early access to videos, my production diaries, fun perks, even copies of my book, Take Better Photos, Smartphone Photography for Noobs. Definitely have to thank everybody who's been supporting production on this channel by checking out that Patreon. You know where to find me around the internet, at SomeGadgetGuy on the Twitters, the Instagrams, the Facebooks, and I will catch you on the next review.